Many things have been said previously before the invasion of Ukraine about Russia, but who has paid attention to it? Has the world paid any real attention during Russia's open aggression in 2008, invading Georgia and openly violating international laws? Did the Western democratic world take it seriously when Russia annexed Crimea, and again violated international laws and jeopardized world security, that Russia is part of and proclaimed internationally to uphold? For a number of years before the invasion, the world has been aware of what Putin has been doing, and especially what he has been saying. Of course, as is in a way understandable, people in the democratic world have tended to ignore some of the aggressive things that Putin has been saying or doing, hoping that eventually, be it very slowly, Russia would join the upward movement towards becoming a fully modern democratic state. There was and still is a naive belief that all people want the same thing, meaning freedom and prosperity. Live and let live. That they all want democracy and that they are ready for it. This clearly has been demonstrated with the United States invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, that not all people want democracy, nor do they want peace and are done with killing other people based on grand ideas or other reasons that disrespect human life. I mean this for both sides, not only for people who live in those places but for United States soldiers as well. Would they had a higher level of consciousness and allegiance to principles of democracy and respect for human life, they would not have supported the invasion of Iraq. The same now with Russia, China and many other less prominent countries in the world, where you see obvious autocracy, and where people have barely any understanding of what democracy really means, and have genuine respect for human rights. It is a common misbelief that people in those countries are suppressed by some regime, some power elite group or sole dictator. In actuality, it's very much an expression of people's state of consciousness, as I hope you will be able to grasp from my explanations. This situation, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, is a textbook example of the school of hard knocks, and humankind's path of ignorance being the default state of approaching life. Only when the knocks become so hard that they cannot be ignored, will people shift their consciousness, will they pay attention to address the situation. Instead of taking the opportunity of available time and space, to prevent or at least severely minimize the fallout of possible incoming events. Ignorance is not a bliss but a road to perdition. Now, since the collective consciousness has shifted, decisively by rude awakening and people have paid sufficient attention to the situation, what is there to say? Well, the first thing one might say is that the path of ignorance does not work, it always leads to suffer, to some calamity. It is not a constructive approach to life. It is not sustainable, especially for the democratic form of government. You cannot realistically change only during a crisis or after a crisis, while waiting for another crisis to inspire you to change, improve and address what needs to be addressed. As one example, the economy. There have been a few economic crises, one after another in the last 20 years alone. Getting worse and worse with each time. Does the democratic world sufficiently pay attention to this, to address the issue? Do people in general pay attention to this? Do people even realize that a functioning economy is the main priority to have sustainable material life? Or is the democratic world waiting for the next economic calamity? Calamity that will finally force you to reconsider the economy and look at why it always goes from boom to bust. Have you not had enough of rising prices on basic commodities and living space? Why does there need to be a bust? Why does the economy just cannot simply naturally grow? There is enough historical data to look at, to analyze and draw a simple conclusion, that the main and essential reason why it goes from boom to bust is that it's manipulated by the financial elite. You recognize, I take it, that oil prices in 2022, and what you pay for gasoline at the pump has gone up. But you see that last summer of 2021, most of the oil-producing nations, including OPEC, decided to increase their output in order to lower gasoline prices and speed up the economic recovery after the pandemic. So how come you had to pay more for gasoline than you were last summer before they started pumping more oil? And the answer is, because there is an elite that is in control of the financial system and that is looking at any way they can to make more money. They are billionaires who made more money during the pandemic than they would have made if there was no pandemic. This is a fact that anyone can verify if they just look at it. These people have absolutely no humanity. They have no sensitivity to the general population and how it affects other people. They have no awareness that we cannot allow ourselves to do this to other people. Why have you been paying more for gasoline? It is not because there is a lack of oil being pumped out of the ground. It is because there is a lack of oil reaching the consumer, because there are speculators who are speculating in oil, and keeping oil from the market to artificially keep prices high, so that the oil they bought at lower prices can be sold at higher prices and they can make a quick profit. The very same thing they have done with grain and other commodities. This was conveniently covered up by the war in Ukraine, blaming many things on it, including prices for electricity bills. In reality, it was pure financial exploitation of the general population by the financial elite. If people will not awake to this exploitation, that is ongoing and will not demand change in how the economy works, by allowing these financial elites to exploit the market on the whim, then there will be more and more economic crises. It is simply a fact that, even if Russia today would stop all sales of its oil to the Western democratic world, the prices will still remain low per barrel of oil. There is enough oil for decades, but with the current level of speculation that is taking place, it simply is not possible to have a sustainable economy. As a matter of fact, the economy became completely anti-democratic at this point. It's entirely designed to allow a small elite of people, the vast majority of them men, to amass wealth. And where do they get this money? It's taken from the circulation of the real economy, from you. That wealth then cannot be spent by anybody and can therefore not make the wheels of the economy turn. In the United States of America, for comparison, 2% of the population own 90% of the wealth. These people are very much interested in creating ups and downs in the economy artificially. They concentrate wealth in their hands through the interplay of an upswing and a downswing. Who is it that loses money in a crisis? The broad population. Who gains? The elite, always the elite. They concentrate wealth, they concentrate property in their hands. This is not a matter of fighting or hating someone or group of people that you can identify as being part of the elite. It's a matter of being educated, becoming aware what is really going on and demand change, at least at the level of the mind, to realize that this simply is wrong and unacceptable. Reality between how the world really is right now and how people imagine it to be is huge. You do not live in a golden age, you live in an age of change, and that change will happen either by you abandoning path of ignorance, or it will take through hard knocks of life as it happened with Russian invasion, the economy in 2008, the whole situation with pandemic and everything else that you all already know about. Have you shifted? Have you made a decision? Have you educated yourself? Because as you all know, China, despite what they claim about respect for peace and international law, firmly believes it can get away with invading Taiwan. Because China is in the same state of mind as Russia, they cannot stop themselves. If you allow it to slide, the devastating effect of Chinese invasion will be far more profound on a Western world and far more direct. This is exactly the same naivety that has been outplayed with Russia, that Putin was not really a threat, and that many people still want to assume that maybe China will not attack Taiwan. You can sit back and wait. You can even enable the dictator like you did with Putin, by buying oil and gas and other commodities from him. Watching as he used a lot of that money to expand his military. The other option you have is you can stand firm. You can be united as democracies and say, here's a leader that we are having to watch. We cannot allow ourselves to embolden him, or to even enable him by financing his war machine. We need to draw a line, we need to stand together, state clearly what we will tolerate and not. And we need to not send our money to build the war machine that will be used against us. We need to not allow our democratic freedoms to be used to undermine democracy or to divide us against each other. If you will not consciously firmly stand and plainly speak what you will allow autocracies to do or not, they will abuse your democracy, your naivety in assuming good about people, and they will exploit you as they have already been doing in your countries, by using your freedom of speech, to gradually work to undermine democracies and brainwash the population to turn against its own governments. A capital attack made in the USA on January 6, 2021 is a bold example of this. Donald Trump, who was the main instigator, likewise has no respect for democracy and what it stands for. He and the people that follow him do not grasp the reality that the essence of democracy is choice and dialogue and not force. These people, they are not in the same state of consciousness as you are. They do not think as you are, nor do they uphold the same human principles and values. Reality is that there are levels of consciousness. It's the core idea that explains why some people are able to commit evil acts without seeing them as evil. Without being able to see that it will hurt themselves in the long run, as happened to Putin, who couldn't see in his low state of consciousness what he was doing and where it would all lead. The West collectively was aware of amassing military hardware and personnel on the border, but they thought he surely could see where this all would lead if he would decide to attack, that it's a completely futile enterprise. This is one of these existential aspects of democracy that democracies really have not recognized yet, that people are in different states of consciousness, and there is a fundamental difference between people who have embraced democracy and those who are not. This you as people of democracy need to recognize. On this I am going to expand more using the Russian invasion of Ukraine as an example.